Hey guys, it's Jad T. Jones, and welcome to another podcast. Today I have my good friend Kurt on the line. Hey Kurt.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. Happy to have you here. Kurt has been a martial artist for the past 20 years. He is a double black belt in Japanese Jiu-Jitsu. He is a sensei. He's also a black belt in Korean old school Taekwondo. He has done Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, boxing, Muay Thai, Judo, and has just been kicking ass ever since he was around 11 years old. So today we're going to have a man-to-man discussion. I'm going to really kind of dig deep and see what manly lessons we can extract from your history in martial arts.
Sure.
So let's start from the beginning. So what got you into martial arts in the first place?
Uh, when I was a little kid, I guess I was a little bit of a sissy, I guess you could say. And, my dad was a little bit worried about that,
Mm,
but I always showed a lot of interest in martial arts. I always watched martial art movies, uh, cartoons, all kinds of stuff growing up. One of my favorite movies was Bloodsport with
okay.
Jean-Claude Van Damme, you know.
Yeah, that movie was huge.
Oh, it was. It's a classic.
Yeah.
Uh, I grew up watching, Ninja Turtles. Uh, I grew up watching a Norris TV series. It was called Walk Texas Ranger.
Chuck Norris, Texas Ranger. I used to watch that.
Yeah, yeah. I used to watch all that stuff, and I was always fascinated by it. And a good friend of mine at the time had started training with this older man. He had a class in his basement, and it was called it was a Taekwondo school. That's the first style I ever learned. And he told me the one day he said that his instructor was going to move the class to this local church. They had a gymnasium there, and asked me if I'd be interested in it. And I said, yeah, I'd like to do that. And I told my parents about it, and Dad thought it was a great idea because, like I said, I was kind of a wimp back then. And so they got me in it, got me involved, and the rest is history. Been training ever since.
Okay, and did you used to get bullied?
Uh, a little bit, yes. Back in, I did a little bit. Uh, but once I started learning, all of a sudden the bullies left me alone.
Okay, and did you have to kind of fight or stand up for yourself at that point? You were like 11 years old or around that
Oh,
age?
yeah. Yeah, I used to get into it with a few of the kids. Most of it was verbal. Uh,
Okay.
once they saw I wasn't going to back down, they usually back off. But yeah, I got into a couple fights as a kid.
Okay. I just wanted to address the bullying thing because it's actually a very common thing. So I think a lot of listeners can relate. So would you say that that gave you confidence to start standing up for yourself, or did you start standing up for yourself before you started taking those classes?
No, I would say it gave me the confidence to stand up for myself. Um,
Okay.
it's interesting. You go. I started going to that class, and I believe the first night I was there, they had me spar, and really didn't know what I was doing. And I went up against my buddy that got me into it, and he kicked the living crap out of me. And
Really? So it wasn't like a gentle introduction.
no, I got thrown to the wolves. I mean, I got punched
Wow.
in the face and everything.
Interesting. Interesting. And
You
that didn't
know,
discourage you.
no. I mean, what you realize is when you get punched in the face like that, it sucks. But you realize, you're a lot stronger than what you think you are.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And, your mind will quit 1,000 times before your body will.
Wow.
And once you realize that, you just develop all kinds of confidence.
Okay, interesting. We've had like in private, like outside of this podcast, we've had a lot of man-to-man conversations, and I've always heard you reference this thing about getting punched in the face, and you know once you can handle that, it kind of gave you confidence in other areas. So that's very interesting, especially for someone like me who's not a fighter and really hasn't been in like a real fight. Like I was in a few fights when I was a kid, but nothing like
Mhm.
really real.
Right.
So that's very interesting to hear. So that's kind of like the best thing to do about fear is face it completely, because then you figure out that there's nothing to be afraid of.
Exactly. I mean, it's never as bad as you think it's going to be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, when before I got punched in the face, I imagined, oh my gosh, he's going to hit me, I'm going to die.
Mm-hmm.
But then he hit me, and I was like, that's it.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And it's never as bad as you think.
Yeah, and then you have all this freedom around it because now you're like, oh wow, okay, well I'm not afraid of that anymore, and then this opens up just a whole world of possibilities now.
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, okay, and I'm speaking kind of like metaphorically, like it's everything we're going to talk about today can be applied. Let's just address this now. Like you agree, so Kurt, you're a sensei, you're a teacher, you've been in this for 20 years, and so you agree that the things you learn in martial arts, the same lessons you learn in martial arts, are the same lessons that allow you to be successful in life, correct?
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
There's so many parallels between the lessons you learn in the dojo and lessons you learn in life.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'd like to talk about um, remember once you were talking about there's something about a guy who's a martial artist. There's something about being a martial artist. Um, when you walk around, you have that different level of confidence or presence in your body. Or do you remember? Remember what you were talking about a few weeks ago?
Yes. So I mean that goes back to the whole getting punched in the face fighting thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you just develop a level of confidence that you just really can't replicate doing anything else.
Mm-hmm.
You're never going to be the toughest SOB on the planet. There's always going to be someone better.
Yeah.
But what it does for you is it gives you this confidence to be able to go anywhere, walk down the street, and not be afraid of anybody because
Okay.
you're going to be okay. You can take care of yourself.
Okay. Okay. So, what's your opinion on fighting? As far as I know, uh, I think what they say is like the all professional martial artists will say avoid a fight at all cost, like outside of the sport, like in a street or whatever. Is that
Right.
correct?
Yes, I mean that's actually the what they would consider the highest level of mastery of the martial arts, to be able to fight a fight without fighting.
Okay, can you explain that and unpack exactly what that means?
Okay. Well, I'll give you an example from my own experience. Several years ago, um, I was at a buddy of mine's gym, and I believe it was a Saturday afternoon, and we were training. And I got done, and on my way home, I decided to stop at a store. Well, I went in, bought a few things, came out, and now keep in mind, this was probably, I don't know, middle of July, August. It was really hot out. It was probably like 90 degrees out. And I noticed this guy leaning up against the building, and he was wearing a trench coat and really big sunglasses. And I thought, well, that's kind of odd. Why would you wear a trench coat in the summertime? Well, I continued to walk, didn't pay much attention to it, and I looked behind me and I noticed he was following me, and he had his hand in the. He said, or he was following me, and I just pretended like I didn't notice him. I was just walking along, And I got about halfway to, and all of a sudden I stopped, and he stopped, and he just kept looking at me. And all of a sudden I just kind of slowly turned and just kind of glared at him. And he looked at me for about 30 seconds. And then all of a sudden he just turned and walked away. I think I made him wet himself.
Yeah,
And,
he could probably see in your eyes that you're not a victim. You're an ass kicker.
exactly.
Hmm.
And that's just an example of fighting without fighting. I made him, it's not so much of what I could do to him. It was more or less what he thinks I might do to him.
Hmm.
And that really scared him. And he just left. But yeah, I
Okay.
mean, I mean, when that you can only achieve that through that kind of confidence, knowing you can take care of yourself. And
Okay, so that's kind of like Mike Tyson is famous for doing that, right? Like his trainer made him always intimidate his opponent and defeat his opponent like before the match even started just by
exactly.
staring him down.
And see, I believe fighting is 80% mental and 20% physical. If you already defeated your enemy mentally, then you've already won the fight.
Okay.
And I owned real estate in that guy's head. He was thinking all these horrible things I was going to do to him, and that's why he didn't attack me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. And is there another like I was expecting a more like what can I say? A more like spiritual, innocent kind of reason. Like, is there another reason why the best way to win a fight is not to fight, or is that really the essence of it? That you're so intimidating that you defeat the person without touching them. Is that the core of what it is?
Well, I mean, if you want to be realistic, that is the core of it.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
but if you want to be more idealistic, I mean, the reality is we all train so that we don't have to fight.
Mhm.
And, because I mean, I really don't want to have to hurt someone. I never want to hurt somebody. So if I
Yeah.
can avoid a fight, I would rather do that.
Yeah, and also because
Um,
you never know if like I'm just thinking also because there are probably a lot of young guys listening to this, and young guys can get into fights really easily, and just because you're a black belt doesn't mean the other guy's not going to pull out a knife or turn out to be part of a gang that's going to come and get you later, or you don't
exactly.
want
And
to
that,
get yourself mixed up in something like maybe you can kick his ass now, but he's coming back with a ton of his friends, or you know what I mean?
right, right. That's why I say if you can avoid a fight, you're better off. Um, because that's the reality of it. You can watch UFC or a boxing match or something like that, but the problem with those things is they're a sport. They got rules.
Hmm.
You get into trouble, the ref can pull the guy off of you.
Yeah.
But on the street, like you said, the guy might have a knife, he might have a gun, he might be 3 times your size, he might have 5 friends. You don't know.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. So best to avoid when you can. So unless you're like backed in a corner, or, unless you have to, yeah, don't. In
exactly.
yeah. Okay, I want to talk about failure. I think failure is a fascinating topic when it comes to martial arts and in particular jujitsu, because a lot of it is failure, right? I mean, it's a slow process.
Oh yeah. Oh, definitely. I mean, that's all you do in the beginning is fail. And yeah, when you first start a martial art, you know, you better leave your ego at the door
Hmm.
because that's all you're going to do is lose time and time again.
How many times?
Oh, well, depending on who you go up against. If you're going up against a master, you're going to lose probably at least 1,000 times.
Wow.
And and then when you start to get good, the problem is if you're going up against a guy that's been doing it a lot longer than you, the chance of you actually beating that guy is going to be pretty slim.
Mm.
But you'll get to a point where you can at least hold your own against that guy. And but what you're going to really see though is when someone new starts and you start sparring them or grappling them or what have you, you're going to think, wow, look how far I came. I can't believe I was like that at one time, because you're going to pretty
Okay.
much be able to do whatever you want to that person.
Okay, yeah, because it's very hard to see our own progress until later when we can compare it, have something to compare it to.
Exactly. And, failure is a better teacher than success. You know, if you win all the time, did you really learn anything?
Hmm.
All it is basically an ego boost. But if you're constantly going up against guys that are better than you, you're going to get better. Because, you like grappling, for example, if, you get caught in a submission, for example, you're going to think, okay, how did this guy get me into this submission? What did I do wrong? And you're going to re-examine that. And then you think, okay, I shouldn't have left my arm out. I left it out a little too long, or, I shouldn't have moved that way. And you'll learn from that, and then you won't make that mistake again if you truly learn from it.
Hmm.
And, there's only a finite amount of mistakes you can make. Eventually, you'll get to a point where you're not really making any mistakes anymore. And that's when you feel like you've mastered it.
I really love that point right there. Is that there's a finite amount of mistakes you can make. That's brilliant. That reminds me of something I read about Thomas Edison. The numbers are different. Some people say he failed 10,000 times, 5,000 times, whatever. But
Right.
there was someone interviewing him and say, "Wow, aren't you discouraged? You failed. You've already failed 4,000 times." And he's like, I have not failed 4,000 times. I have successfully discovered 4,000 ways not to create a light bulb, right? And
Exactly.
yeah, and then I think he went on to say, like, eventually I'm going to run out of ways, and then the only thing left will be the right way. So that's such a winner's mindset. And I think the generation coming up today with everything now, insta everything, they're really losing that muscle of knowing how to fail and understanding that the only way to success is through repeated failure. And
Definitely.
yeah, and life is like, reality is dualistic, meaning there are two sides, right? You can't have success without the failure. So failure is actually a part of success, right?
Exactly. And, I've learned over the years, you got to watch the guy that's failed more than anybody else,
Mm,
because he's learned more than anyone else.
mm-hmm,
And eventually that guy won't be failing anymore.
mm-hmm. Here's another thing that came into my mind. While one man hesitates because he feels, uh, wait, one sec. While one man hesitates because he feels superior, not because he's afraid, because he feels inferior, the other man is busy making mistakes and becoming superior. So
Exactly.
yeah, like uh, again, too many people are afraid of making mistakes, and the school system teaches us that making mistakes is bad, and that if we make mistakes, we get an ugly grade. Maybe we get embarrassed in front of the class, and so forth. And so people come out into the real world not understanding just the magnitude that is necessary in terms of how many mistakes you need to make in order to get the thing you want or to get where you want.
Exactly. And I always encourage my students to experiment when they're sparring, when they're grappling.
Mm-hmm.
Try new things. It doesn't matter if you fail in here. This is a controlled environment. I'd rather you fail here than on the street. So
Mm-hmm.
try it, learn from it.
So you actually encourage your students to fail in the class, to make mistakes.
Yes, because I know that's the best way to learn.
I'm curious, do you find that there are some students who just have a terribly hard time, or they just come in and then they think that, they realize that, wow, I'm just going to be failing for the next month or whatever, 5 months or a year or whatever, and then they just walk out? Or like, are you able to
Oh,
spot people?
absolutely. Oh my gosh. You know, A couple years ago, I was teaching a class with a buddy of mine, and we started keeping track of how many people was coming through. And we discovered we had a 94% dropout rate in our class.
Wow.
And it was because, I believe, of egos. I had a guy come in one time, and he thought he was just the toughest guy to have ever lived because he did some wrestling in his backyard with a couple buddies of his. And I said, all right. So I had him, he did the class, and we were grappling that night, and he wanted to grapple. And I said, okay, that's fine. We'll see what you know. And why two other people were grappling, one of my students told me later on that he whispered over in her ear, he said, I'm never going to lose in here. And he went out on the mat, and his first match, he got choked out. And he got up from that, and he walked into the locker room and was gone for about 20 minutes. And I thought, where did he go? He finally came out. His eyes were swollen red. He had been in there bawling like a 2-year-old because he lost.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and I mean, this guy was like 21 years old. It's like, dude, you need to grow up. And yeah, I mean, you just can't teach a guy like that. They think they know it all already. And you got to have some humility when you walk into a dojo like that. You just have to, or otherwise you just won't learn anything.
Yeah, and that it comes back to life, right? If you don't walk in with some humility into life, let's say you're starting a business or whatever you're doing, or starting a new, whatever you're trying to learn how to play guitar or whatever it is, if you don't come in there with humility, life's going to teach you a lesson real quick.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what are so 94% dropout rate.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that is kind of like an accurate statistic of if you take 100 people, 6 of them will be successful and the other 94 won't. That's in alignment with statistics I've heard, right? So
Yeah.
about, let's say, 5%. So what qualities would you say are important for a man to learn or to have to tackle? Let's say you look at a guy and you're like, he's still a brand new student, but you see values in him that you say, okay, if this guy works hard, this guy could be, he could get to black belt, he could get to purple, he could make it. What are some
Right.
things you see in him that you don't see in others?
Okay. Well, first of all, I'm looking for humility.
Interesting. That's the first thing you
Second of
said.
all, yes. Second of all, he's got to be very open-minded. His mind has to be like a sponge. He just absorbs everything I tell him. And, a lot of people don't do that. A lot of people come in with, their preconceived ideas or their opinions on how a technique should be done, performed. But in order to make black belt, you need to be completely open to what your instructor tells you. You can't be lazy. You have to be willing to commit lots of time and energy into this. I mean, it's really a lifelong pursuit. I mean, you never stop learning, even after you get a black belt. But I would say those are the 3 main qualities I'd be looking for.
Okay, so humility, open-minded, and by like completely open, and committed. You can't be lazy. You're going to commit time, and basically, you're committing to this thing for life.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um,
Okay, so sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, some people are more athletically inclined than others. That's also a plus.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say those 3 are the main ones. Somebody once said, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard.
Mm-hmm. And that's so true. That happens all the time.
Yes.
So I want to know why you said humility first.
Um, it's definitely the most important because if you're not humble, you're not going to be open minded. And if you're not humble, you're going to be arrogant. You're not going to be willing to put in the time or the energy because you believe, oh, I'm good enough, or oh, I
Mhm.
got this down.
Or I'm special, or I'm the exception. I see that a lot.
Exactly. I can't tell you how many times I've taught someone a technique. Say, I'm teaching an arm bar one night. Well, they'll do it maybe once or twice, and then they think they've mastered it. It's like, no, you haven't mastered that. You might have memorized it, but you haven't mastered it.
Okay, so what's the
You know?
difference?
Well, memorization is when you know something in your mind. Mastery is when you know it in your body. You got to get to a point where you're not even thinking,
So
because
how does
in a
one?
real fight, you're not going to have time to think. You're just going to have to react. It's got to become instinct. It's got to become muscle memory, if you
Okay,
will.
so it is the only way to achieve muscle memory and instinct repetition, like hundreds or thousands of repetitions.
Exactly. It's been said that in order to master just one technique, you got to do it at least 10,000 times.
Okay, so it's really like, again, I'm seeing, oh, this is all parallels. It's like, um, it's a paradigm shift. It's a completely different paradigm. The beginner's mind is he's excited. He thinks he's going to learn everything quickly, and he wants to get to the fancy stuff and not really practice the fundamentals. But then uh, you being a sensei, looking back 20 years and knowing it and having done it, your paradigm is that, okay, we're going to have to practice this thing 10,000 times. So your concept of hard work versus a newbie's concept of hard work is completely different.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I often tell people you really don't start learning anything about the martial arts until after you got your black belt. That's when the real learning begins.
Wow. Okay. Why? What's the logic? What does that mean? Like in a deep sense, what does that mean?
Because going up through the ranks, you're really just scratching the surface. You're just learning the surface level things, but you really don't get into the essence and the deep philosophical aspects of the martial arts until you get to black. And and a lot of times what happens is when you get black, you basically become your own master. You set out on your own. Maybe you don't train with your instructor anymore, and you have no one to rely on but yourself. So you have to train yourself and become your own. Make that style that this instructor's been teaching you all these years. With him gone, now you really got to make it your own. And that was one of the things that helped me a lot. Is I had instructors, but a lot of times I got neglected. I had to learn a lot of things on my own, a lot of lessons. It was tough, but it made me better.
Okay, that's very interesting. So that's that's like another challenge that you overcame, because it could have been very easy for you to just huff and puff and complain and be like, oh, they're not paying attention to me, screw this, and then you could have just quit, right? And then you would have had a very valid excuse like, hey, they're not giving me the
Right,
attention I need.
right.
Uh-huh.
But I had to take the initiative upon myself to learn it on my own.
Uh-huh.
Um, I had instructors teach me a technique once and say, well, I really don't have time to teach you again, so I'm going to teach you this once, and you're going to have to remember it for next time. And I would learn it, and then I would practice it over and over and over again until I didn't have to think about it anymore.
Wow. That's really challenging to be shown something only once.
Yeah, you get shown once, and then the next time you perform it, it's for your test.
Oh my God. Were you allowed to like videotape it with your phone at least?
Back then, I didn't videotape anything back then. No.
Yeah, it was before kind of like cell phones were like all that, right?
Right, right.
Wow. Wow. Okay. So, coming back to, I want to link this to, non-martial arts lessons, in terms of paradigms of working hard, because again, for the listeners, we're using martial arts symbolically. So everything we're talking about here applies to your life. So uh, the thing I see, and because I mainly teach men how to get good with women, and one thing that I see in terms of paradigms, a paradigm is kind of like a way of looking at things, is that paradigm of hard work. Like, guys come to me and they really do not understand what it really takes to get this woman thing handled once and for all, like what it really takes. And they greatly underestimate the task at hand. And so then when they hire me and I start coaching them and I start telling them what they need to do, I get some slackers, and then I'm like, man, it's not going to happen for you if you're not going to, change your paradigm and really, up your game, right? So, for you young guys listening, whatever it is that you want to accomplish, I think a safe bet for you would be to take whatever your preconception of what you think hard work is in whatever area you're going to dedicate yourself to. However hard you think you need to work, multiply that at least by 10, at least minimum by 10, because you're probably greatly underestimating the amount of time, effort, and money that it's going to take for you to get to the spot where you're aiming. So, Kurt, do you agree with that? Is there anything you want to expand on that, or?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, basically, like we say in the martial arts, you have to unlearn everything you've learned. You just got to be a clean slate. Just be totally open to what you're going to be taught. And yeah, I mean, you really got to dedicate a lot of time to anything you're trying to master.
So let's talk
Gotta,
about this second concept of openness, because you just mentioned it again. So what does it mean for someone? Because everybody's going to be like, oh yeah, I'm open-minded. Yeah, what does that really mean? Because I think, I don't, what does that mean?
right. It means you have to throw away every opinion you have about the thing, the
Okay,
subject that
so
you're
is
trying
that
to.
kind of like, I'm coming in here thinking I know something, and you're saying, no, 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 Jad, you don't know shit, right? And that's where the humility
Exactly.
comes in. Like, okay, I can, like, right now I just got like a boom, because that's how I feel with a lot of guys that I coach. I'm like, bro, you think you know, but you have no idea. You think you're this close, but you are so far away. Like, just shut up and listen to me, bro. Like, so it's that's what you're
Exactly.
saying.
Exactly.
Okay.
I mean, as far, from a martial arts perspective, I mean, a guy that comes to me and says he knows how to fight and he understands this technique and understands that, it's like, okay, then
Mm-hmm.
why are you still getting your ass kicked?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I mean, if you know so much, why are you getting creamed every time you walk on the mat?
Mm-hmm.
So you know you have to be just totally open and just set aside everything that you think you know about it and just really pay close attention. And then once you master it, you you might come up with your own opinions, your own style of doing it. But until then, listen to everything your instructor says.
Okay, got you. So an analogy of that in another, like let's say in a business setting, would be to, if you find a good mentor, or yeah, if you have a mentor, then you need to really trust your mentor. Okay, see, this is all linking up to me, right? I can relate it to
Yes,
another thing. When I'm coaching, when my coaching isn't working, it's because my student's not trusting me. And I tell them all these things, and I'm like, you're gonna do this, okay? This week you're gonna do this, this, and this. Yes, Jad. You understand why we're gonna do this, this, and this? Yes, Jad. Okay, so you promise you're gonna do this, this, and this? Yes, Jad, I promise. Next week comes along. Have you done this, this, and that? No, I did this, this, and this instead. And
Yeah.
how are your results? I'm still stuck. Well, oh, no kidding, right? And then I have to give them the speech of like, in order for me to help you, you need to trust me. You need to trust what I'm telling you. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay, so it's exactly the same. That's funny, man. You speaking my language, Kurt. I'm feeling understood for like I for like it's so rare for me to feel like I understood with this stuff. Oh, that's hilarious. Okay, okay. So for you listening right now, when you're undertaking something, I'm going to give this speech again because it cannot be said enough. If you're serious about success, you need to get a mentor. Don't do it alone. It's the stupidest thing in the world is to go and reinvent the wheel. The wheel has been invented. There's a mentor, a master who knows about it. You go to him, you shortcut your success, right? So but when you go to a mentor, that's not enough. You're not done yet. You have to arrive humble and then completely open. Put your opinions to the side and put some trust in your mentor, your sensei, your what have you.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can think whatever you want of your opinions, but obviously they haven't got you the results that you've been looking for.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
throw them away.
Okay. Okay. So completely open. Now I see why you said humility first, because if a person isn't humble, they're just not open. Just
No.
not open to anything. You're
Mm-mm.
fighting against them, and you don't have time. You're just going to be like, next, I cannot teach you. Which is exactly what you said.
Exactly.
Uh-huh. Okay. Yeah, I'm loving this. This is very, very, I mean, these are core values that every man should have. And I think especially for the younger guys, it's harder to be humble when you're young because you're just more naturally like, I'm indestructible and I know it all. And we've all been through
Yeah.
that until life kicks our ass and teaches us otherwise, right?
Yeah, definitely. I was the same way.
Mm-hmm. Uh-huh.
I just
So,
learned it a little younger because, like I said, I was 11 when I started.
okay.
I was
So did
back.
you learn humility through martial arts?
Oh, definitely. I was getting my ass kicked every week.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you become pretty humble when that happens all the time.
Okay. Okay. Um, is there, again, I like to, so you being a teacher, seeing a bunch of students and then looking into a class and be like, okay, I can spot the winners. I can spot the quitters. Maybe not every time, of course, not 100%, but in general. So what warning signs would you give people in terms of uh, laziness, not giving it their all, trying to cut corners? What weaknesses can you spot in people that ultimately leads to defeat or them not becoming a success?
Well, just like you said, people that are arrogant, people that are afraid to fail, people that don't like losing. You're just going to have to get used to that. People that don't practice, I'll tell them, you need to practice this week. And they're like, like you said, with what you do, they'll say, okay, yeah, I'll do that. And then they come back next week and you can just tell they haven't done it since last time we met. And, and then they just never learn that way, there's been a lot of guys over the years where I will teach them something. I'll tell them exactly how to do it. And I'll tell them, watch me. This is how I do it. And then I'll stand there and watch them, and they'll completely butcher it. And I'll say, no, you got to do it this way. And I'll show them again. And they make the same exact mistakes again.
Mm-hmm.
It takes them a while to get in their head. And some people, they just never open up enough to do it exactly the way I tell them. And they just keep doing it their way. And they keep getting that same poor result over and over again. And then they come crying to me later on saying, well, I don't think that's very effective. I don't think that works. It's like, well, that's because you're not doing it right.
And what do you think is the cause of them, not doing it right after you show them, and that their inability, is it because they lack presence, they're up in their heads, or
I
what do you
think
think that causes?
I think it's either one of two things. It's either the presence where they're just not paying attention and they're just overthinking it, or it's arrogance and they just don't want to. They just think they know it already.
Okay. 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 I remembered another quote. The difference between successful people and unsuccessful people is successful people failed a lot more. So again, you're talking about, that thing I think about jujitsu is that it really, really does teach you, it's okay to make mistakes, and it's actually, that's the way to win. So
Exactly.
for the young guys listening, it's really important you get this part, because again, it's not taught in schools. It's not really taught in our culture. It's definitely not taught in the Hollywood movies that we're being unconsciously programmed by. Is that a huge, massive chunk of succeeding is repeated failures, hundreds of failures, thousands of failures. And failure, you could be failing for 5 years or 10 years, or, depending on what the undertaking is, you could be failing for 10 years, right? But
Right.
that does not
I
mean
mean,
that you need to be discouraged, right? So what are some mindsets, or what would you say to the guys, like, just to give them a kind of a paradigm shift?
um, I would say, success is like looking at an iceberg. You only see the tip, you only see the actual success. But what you don't see is what's under the surface. All the failures, all the blood, sweat, and tears someone's put into it, all that effort. It's been said that a black belt, a master, is simply a white belt that just never quit. And that's true.
Uh-huh.
So you just never give up. You just keep going. Because I mean, you look at guys that you think, wow, I'd like to be as good as him. I want to be as good as him right now. Well, you know what? He was you at one time,
Mm-hmm.
and he had to go through all that learning, all that pain, and all that trials and tribulations to get where he's at.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
I want
and
to
I mean, there's
touch.
nothing.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, there's nothing special about me. I mean, anybody can do what I did. You just have to be willing to do it.
Mm-hmm. Just putting in your time. There are two things you touched on here that I want to expand on. One is paying the price, and the other one is um, just, was it pain? Were you talking about pain, or you were talking
Yes.
about? You're talking about, oh yeah, pain. Let's talk about pain first. What I find when I'm teaching guys, again, in my coaching with, how to get good with women, is that I always give this analogy. It's like, I tell them, it's like you want to play American football, but you're only willing to score the touchdowns, but you don't want to ever get tackled. And if you get
Right.
tackled, you're like, oh, I don't want to play anymore, right? And so you can't say you want to play American football if you're not willing to get tackled, right?
Right.
So, well, same thing with you. It's like, okay, like that iceberg is like, you went through a lot of pain, a lot of defeat. Like if you want the good, you have to accept the bad with the good. You can't just expect the good without the bad.
Yeah, and I mean, I believe to fully understand something, you have to experience the good and the bad. You got to be on both the giving end and the receiving end of it.
Hmm. I really like that. Yeah, yeah. And in terms of paying the price, I've said it 100 times, and that's what Kurt is saying. You got to pay the price in time and effort and commitment. So the thing about success is the principles of success are simple, but they're not easy. But they are simple.
Yes, absolutely.
You know what I really
And
love about martial arts and the whole thing on the mat is there's nowhere to hide, right? Like in life, there's so much room for posers, for people to pretend they're something they're not. But on the mat, there's absolutely no room. Who you are is
Yeah.
going to be revealed on the mat.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I've had guys come in and explain to me all their credentials and how tough they really are and all these things. Then they get their ass handed to them on a
Yeah.
silver platter.
Uh-huh.
And it's like, okay.
Yeah.
A good example of that was two females in my class one time. That was hilarious. This one girl, she was a black belt. And you'd think, okay, she's pretty tough. Well, she sparred one of my green belts, which is a pretty low rank.
Mm.
And my green belt kicked the living snot out of her. And she was scared to death of her. She never wanted to fight her again. And what it was is, my students, I teach them to fight full contact all the time.
Okay.
A lot of schools, they don't do that. They go in, they do a fancy kata or something like that, but they never really touch on fighting itself. And yeah, you step on the mat, you find out who the posers are real quick.
Wow.
The only thing that belt was good for was holding her pants up.
Wow. Yeah, that's a reality check.
Yeah. And unfortunately, there's a lot of that these days. A lot of schools, they're just there to teach you a few dances, and that's about it.
Mm-hmm. A few dances.
Yeah.
There's that video I saw that in China. There was this guy who challenged a Tai Chi master or something and just knocked him out in a few seconds.
Yeah, them Tai Chi guys are fun to watch.
Oh yeah, fun to watch. Yeah. So I mean, yeah. So again, in terms of, yeah, I really like that in terms of nowhere to hide, because in life there are so many posers, and it's actually
Right.
easy. It's easy to pose behind
Right.
your Instagram, behind whatever. There's so many things to hide behind. And then martial arts is just that pure. Maybe that's why people love it so much too, love the UFC. It's just like, all right, there's nowhere to hide. We're going to see what these guys are really made of.
Exactly. There's no nonsense in it. You just go in and go at it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Miyamoto Musashi, he wrote the Book of Five Rings, and I highly recommend you read the book if you haven't already.
Okay, can you repeat the book name?
It's called The Book of Five Rings.
Okay.
And it's mostly on war strategy, military strategy, things of that nature. But you can take his lessons and apply them to all aspects of life. It's a very interesting book. And he said once that the only way to get good at fighting is to fight.
Mm-hmm.
It's that simple.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you can apply that to anything. The only way to get good at something is just to go out and do it.
Yeah. The only way to get good with girls, go talk to a bunch of girls.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I find the more I talk to girls, the easier it gets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. It's again, it's that simplicity. It's like, again, when you say it out loud, it's like, well, duh. But then you have these guys. If we're going to talk about girls right now, it's you have these guys who've spent not weeks, not months, but years on YouTube and torrent sites, downloading every course they can get their hands on and free YouTube video. They can talk a good talk. They can probably write a pretty good book too, but they can't go out and do it.
Right. I mean, it's the same, in the martial arts community, there's a lot of people that I'll call them, internet warriors. They
Internet warriors.
they get on there and they watch a couple UFC fights or they'll watch some Chuck Norris movie and all of a sudden they're a master.
Mm-hmm.
But, put them on the mat once and see what happens.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's very important. Actually, I was just reminded of something. I've had this kind of like, I'm kind of proud of myself for this. I'm allowed to be proud of this because I had it when I was 10 years old. I was in grade 4, and there was this really tall guy. He was like a tall, big guy. He was bigger than all of us. His name was Josh. And everybody always hated on him all the time, talked shit about him. He must have been a bit of a weirdo, you know? Like, poor
Hmm.
guy, he must have been a bit off or something. He really liked guns. And, so it was easy to pick on him, but he was like a really big guy, right? So everybody kept talking shit about him, but nobody ever like, did anything. So one day, and I was a really good kid. I never used to get in trouble or anything, but I just, at that age, even at 10, I'm like, you know what? You need to walk your talk. You can't just fucking talk all this shit and not, if you're going to say something, do it.
Right.
So
Right.
one day I went to the playground and I picked a fight with him, and he was huge. He was huge, right? And it's not, I was a little wimp, but
Mm.
and he kicked my ass, right? But I went to fight him because I'm like, look, like literally, I had the whole class was talking shit about him, but no one was doing anything. So I just to show them, I'm like, shut up or do something. You gotta. So a man needs to walk his walk, right? And a
Right.
funny thing is that later it was his birthday, and he invited me to his birthday, and he actually thanked me because he knew everybody was talking shit about him, and he actually thanked me for being the one who would actually like face him and instead of being a hypocrite kind of thing, right? So even at that
Right.
early age, we had this kind of like man to man respect thing. But
Oh yeah.
yeah, it's important, right? Like walk your walk, or just shut the fuck up. Like
Exactly. I mean, I'm reminded. You know what the difference between dogs and wolves are?
look.
A dog will bark. A wolf will just bite.
Hmm,
You know,
interesting.
I don't go around trash talking people. You know, if somebody
Yeah,
wants to mess with me, they're just going to find out the hard way.
yeah, exactly. The
There's a
loudest
lot of dogs
mouths
in the
are.
world.
Sorry.
I said there's a lot of dogs in the world.
A lot of dogs, exactly. That the loudest mouths. This reminded me of something that I wanted to make a video of. I'm gonna say it right now. It's that I have learned, because I've done outside of this business, I've done like other businesses, and I got burned a couple times. And what I learned, because I had like these business partners, or we did joint ventures, or something, and a very funny pattern has emerged now, where now I can spot it right away. The people who screwed me over were the people who were, oh yes, no problem, yes, oh no, of course. So here's another man-to-man lesson for you guys listening. When you're doing business, or just in general, the more outgoing and, oh no problem, yeah, no, we'll take care of, oh yeah, that's okay, oh, when you get that kind of like too easygoing, a lot of words, a lot of nice words, a lot of yes, oh no, we'll take, oh yeah, don't worry about that. Those are the guys that'll screw you over. The
Yeah.
people that will have integrity will be like, okay, let's have a written contract. Everything we're going to agree on, we're going to have on the contract. They're not going to be so easygoing. You're going to say, okay, I want this and that. They're going to be like, no, let's talk about it. I want to negotiate this. So the more, it's counterintuitive, but the more serious, strict, and maybe less friendly someone is, generally they're a lot more trustworthy than those outgoing, charismatic people who tell you everything is going to be okay, and no matter what, don't worry about a thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I forgot what you said that got me off on that tangent. Oh yeah, yeah. Basically, yeah. The people that talk the most are the ones who are usually full of shit, full of the most,
Definitely.
full of shit the most.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When it comes to tough guys, always watch the quiet ones.
Yeah. Always watch the quiet. Some good advice right there. I'm curious. Kurt is very active in our private Facebook Brotherhood, Brothers Elite community, and he's always sharing these wise quotes. Do you have any like favorite quotes or parables, or something that you would like to share, like just off the top of your head?
Hmm. Um, I would say, um, just just always, always be yourself. Don't let anybody tell you any different. You know, people always say, people always compare themselves to other people, and that's just stupid. You're just robbing yourself of your own potential. I mean, you're unique. Use your abilities to your advantage. I mean, you've been given gifts that no one else has. Find out what those gifts are and learn to use them.
Mm, very nice. Beautiful. Yeah, let's unpack that a bit. That's very powerful. So, uh, I use the same word as your gifts. It's that we need to, each one of us as men, you need to look at yourself, or let's use we need to look at ourselves as this unique package, this unique combination of qualities that makes up who we are, which allows us to deliver a service to the world. So for myself, and I'm gonna give an example right now with something that something personal, because I think it'll be beneficial to you guys, is that I'm very sensitive. I'm very emotionally sensitive. And it's not just something I'm saying. It's like, even my girlfriend tells me, my mom tells me, it's like, I'm very sensitive. So you could maybe, if you want to say it in a judgmental way, too sensitive, right? So being a man and having this sensitivity, this emotional sensitivity, is a struggle, right? Because as a man, you're expected to be strong, you're expected to be indestructible, and so forth, right? So for years, I didn't accept this. This was like, okay, this is a negative thing about me. This is a weakness. This is weak, right? But later, I came to discover and appreciate that this this gift of sensitivity is what has allowed me to touch the lives of millions of men and have them feel understood and cared for and supported. And, I've turned literally, thousands or hundreds of thousands, depending how you want to calculate the impact of men's lives around, because of my approach to the topic of seduction and being a man. Like, I approach it in a sensitive way that people feel like, okay, this guy understands me. It's safe to speak to Jad. He's not going to judge me. And so my sensitivity is a strength. It's a gift, because I have found my purpose. And it turned out that I believe there's a higher power. So I believe I was created in this specific way in order to serve this specific purpose. And had I not been sensitive, I would not be able to be Jad T. Jones doing what I'm doing. So we perceive, sometimes we're quick to judge ourselves thinking, oh, why am I like this? But that's a part of your gift, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. I growing up, I was very quiet. I didn't say much. I'm a natural introvert.
Mm-hmm.
And I always thought that was a weakness. I thought, man, I should be more outgoing. But somebody told me once, they said, you're the smartest person in the room. I said, what do you mean? I said, because you don't say anything. You just sit back and listen.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always been a really great listener. I tend to hear people. But, I try to be very present when I'm talking to someone, and people really appreciate that. They feel like I actually hear them and I actually see them,
Exactly. And that is a very rare gift these days, where, I mean, it's very hard to meet someone who actually listens to me. Like, that's
Yeah.
a common complaint I hear from women, because I think it's more like a topic you talk about with women, but I think just in general, I mean, so exactly. So for you guys listening, especially the younger guys, is whatever your mix is, don't be so quick to judge it, but rather be patient and see how things unfold, see how your purpose unfolds, and it will be revealed to you that this apparent vice that you have will actually turn out to be a very unique gift, which will make you, the best at what you do because of your unique combination.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, sometimes our perceived weaknesses become our greatest strengths.
Yeah. So, what would so be yourself is something a lot of people, they have a tough time with because they say, "Ah, well, I'm being myself, but I'm not getting what I want. So obviously, I can't be myself." Like, what do you mean by the statement "be yourself"?
Um, I mean, you shouldn't let other people influence you. You should learn to think for yourself.
So don't imitate, instead create.
Exactly. I mean, you should be open minded always when you're trying to learn something, but you don't always have to take every single piece of advice that you're given.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
I'm always, ever since I was young, I was always skeptical about things, but I would always be open to it and I would experiment with it. I think that's the best way to be, because that way you can be open, but you're not naive to everything.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a very good quality because I tend to be more too optimistic, and that got me in trouble especially when I was younger. I didn't have that skepticism. So when you said that right now, I immediately, because of my past errors, I immediately recognized that as like, oh, you had that when you were young. Wow, that's kick ass.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And, I mean, just an example from my own life. I mean, when I first discovered you, Jed, I heard some of the things you were saying. I'm thinking, okay, does that really actually work?
Mm-hmm.
And I tried it, and I thought, holy cow, this stuff actually works.
You're damn
You
right
know,
it works.
I mean, it's just something simple as, I think the first lesson I ever learned from you was when you look at a girl, make sure she looks away first.
Okay.
Because I had this nasty habit of looking away first because I was always thinking, well, she probably thinks I'm a pervert. Like, why is he staring at me?
Uh-huh.
But the reality was, by looking away, she was thinking, okay, what's wrong with this creep? Why do he look away?
Yeah. Yeah.
But instead of looking away, you said, just smile. So I did. And the most amazing thing happened. She smiled back.
Imagine that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
now you're causing a whole bunch of trouble with the ladies.
oh my, yes.
Now you're just out of control.
Yeah.
Okay, so the final question to wrap this up is I want you to think of I want you to share a lesson right now that you wish your father or some manly figure would have taught you that would have made your life a whole lot easier had you learned it when you were younger.
Um, I would say I wish they would have taught me how to be more, a little bit more uh, socially confident, uh, a little bit more playful. I mean, in my younger days, I was very serious and very quiet. I guess maybe even shy. Um, I wish they would have showed me how to do that at a younger age, because I feel like I didn't socially develop as quickly as everyone else around me did.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the advice you would give to others is start being social and like what if you would turn that into what would you into advice?
Um. So yeah, I would start being more social. I would start just start talking to people. You'd be surprised how many people open up just when you're just friendly with them. And it really just opens up so many possibilities. Because, I mean, it's not so much with just women, but, you know, the more people you meet, the more people you talk to, the more opportunities that are presented towards you. Because, I mean, it might be girls, and it might be a career. You know, like maybe you're looking to get into some kind of career. Well, you met someone that is in that career. It's in that field. Well, maybe he can mentor you. Maybe he can help you get on. You know, it's all about, I guess the word would be called networking.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's a lot of possibilities with that, just by being friendly and talking to people.
Yeah, because then you have a whole lot, like a lot more connections, and yeah, a lot more possibilities. And
Yes.
like I know, because Kurt and I speak often, he goes about his days, and like a naughty boy goes and talks to women, all throughout his day, everywhere he goes, at the store, at the gym, at the restaurants, and he's always teasing them and being playful, and he's living
Yeah.
through this playful attitude, which I think that's a huge like life lesson, like an attitude, a way of life, or a way to move through life.
Right. Well, it's you're just being real. You know, you're being honest with people. You're just saying what's on your mind.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and women to an extent, but a lot of guys just, they're too nice. They don't say what they mean. They hide their feelings. They hide their emotions towards women. They let people push them around because they're too afraid to speak up for themselves. You know, you just got to learn to be honest with people. And I think, even like girls, I mean, they appreciate a guy that picks on them more than a guy that's just being nice to them.
Yeah. Girls are sick of nice. Nice is like seeing the same primitive magic trick for the thousandth time. It's like, okay.
Yeah, it's so, you know, and I mean, and I've even met women that are just too nice, and it's a major turnoff for even me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it doesn't matter how attractive she is. I mean, if she's just being overly nice and overly compensating, it's just a turnoff.
Mm-hmm. And it breaks the connection too, because then you don't really have a real connection with that person, because it's inauthentic in the end of the day.
Exactly.
And that's in alignment with what you said about, just be yourself. So that's in alignment with, to be playful is like to enjoy life, to go through your days with that kind of playful joy. You have to be yourself, because if you're being inauthentic, you're not going to be in that positive energy. Whereas if you're just being real, you're having fun, everything just flows and fits and
Right.
works. It's all automatic
And
after that.
what I've learned after 20 years of martial arts is the most confident guys are always the most playful.
That's
Usually
beautiful.
guys that are serious or quiet or just really, just antisocial in general, they usually are hiding insecurities. You know, even nice guys, they're just hiding their insecurities. But really confident guys, people that are truly comfortable being themselves around anyone, they're just playful all the time. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
some of my instructors, these guys are probably some of the toughest SOBs around. I mean, the one guy that taught me judo, I'm going to tell you something. Every time I got on the mat, it didn't matter. I was going for a ride. There was no objection to it. He grabbed a hold of me, and the next thing I know, I'm airborne. And it was a very, I'd be up in the air, upside down. I'd look up, and I'd see the mat. And it's kind of a peaceful, serene moment when you're in the air, and you look at the mat, and you think, oh, I'm going to hit that really hard.
Yeah, no shit.
But you know what? I mean, what he taught was really effective, and he was really serious when he taught it, but he was the most playful guy you ever met. He would oftentimes, I'd go over to his house to train. He had a dojo in his basement. And he would come down early in the morning. He'd be wearing his jacket with his belt, but his hair would be all disheveled and all. It'd be like he just got out of bed. He'd have a cup of coffee in his hand. He'd be wearing slippers and pajama pants with little rubber duckies on them. And you think, what the heck is this?
Real intimidating.
Yeah, real intimidating. I mean, he'd be like, "What's up, man? How you doing?" And just real playful. He'd kid around with you, but then you get on the mat, and all of a sudden, he just morphed into this freaking warrior and just kill you every time.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's very interesting because again, I can parallel that perfectly with seduction, where to seduce is to be playful. I mean, they're inseparable. To be a seducer is to be playful. To be good with women is to be playful. So that's very interesting that you said the same thing about fighting.
Yeah. Another instructor of mine, really good. Oh my gosh, you just did not want to fight this guy. And I mean, he wasn't very big either, but just really effective. And all the time, he was always being playful. And it was funny. He would always be playful with girls. He'd be teasing them and flirting with them, and every once in a while, if we'd be standing outside getting ready to walk into the dojo or something, he'd be like, "Wow, did you see that girl over there? She's pretty hot." Just kind of picking on me a little bit. And I mean, they're all like that. It's so funny.
That's interesting. So if you could make we're supposed to wrap up. I'm always like obsessed with like digging deeper. If you could make like a logical, because I can logically break down why being playful is effective with women and seduction in relation to seduction. But what's the link between being a great fighter and being playful? Why are those two things always paired?
Because I think you can't be too serious in a dojo, because what we do can be very dangerous. It can be it's very effective. I mean, you could break an arm very quickly, or break your jaw, or break your nose, whatever. So I think you mix that seriousness with playfulness. It eases, it eases everyone to, they know, okay, yeah, this is serious, but we're going to be okay.
Okay. Is that kind of like, I'm getting two things here. One is like the best learning environment is when the student is relaxed. So that kind of plays into that. And then the other thing is that the more relaxed fighter is the stronger fighter, where so maybe playfulness plays into that, where you're fighting, but you're still not. If you're taking yourself so seriously, then you're stiff, then you're not a good fighter. Would you agree with that kind of?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you have to be relaxed. I tell people all the time, don't fight like a robot. You watch these guys and videos and stuff, they do a kata or something that's so robotic, and you don't fight that way. I mean, just watch a boxing match once. Watch Tyson or Muhammad Ali. I mean, they were so relaxed when they got on the ring, and you want to be fluent like water. And I think playfulness does play a part in that. It relaxes the students to a point where they know, okay, I don't have to be too serious. I don't have to have everything picture perfect, because the reality is, in a fight, it's never going to be as pretty as it is when you're doing it, just practicing it in the air.
Never.
I'm not a big fan of the term martial art, because there's really nothing artistic about it. I mean, it's chaos is what it is.
Okay, that's also in alignment with what I tell my students, is that success is messy. Like, if you want to get good with this girl thing, prepare to be very messy. Like, in the course, it's all like, do this, do that. But when you go out, just be willing for everything to be success is messy. Yeah. So you're saying the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, as far as fighting goes, it's never going to be the biggest guy, the strongest guy, the fastest guy, the most experienced guy. It's always going to be the guy that can adapt to anything.
Mm-hmm.
He's always the one that's going to win. And if you can improvise and adapt on the fly, even when you're talking to women, yeah, it's going to be messy, but it's effective.
Yeah, yeah, and that comes back to flexibility is also a very, I think, core attribute of all successful people. The ability to be flexible. People who are too uh, stuck in their ways are usually difficult. Are usually not the innovators, not the greats. Right? You need flexibility in life in order to succeed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't ever assume everything's going to happen exactly the way it is in your head.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even the best laid battle plans never survive contact with the enemy.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, you got to be willing to adapt right there on the spot.
I really like that word. I haven't really used that word, adapt. It's a very nice word.
Yes.
Yeah, because now you're coming in like yeah, it's that mindset, right? So if we look at if you yeah, whatever you have a preconceived idea of how you think something's gonna be, but then it's usually different, and then you adapt. And the
Yeah,
adapters are
exactly.
the ones who make it, and the other ones who just give
Yep.
up because, oh, this isn't what I expected, and they turn their backs and leave. Those are the ones who
Right.
never get anywhere.
I mean, just with girls, okay, you think, okay, I'm going to go up to this girl, I'm going to say this and this and this. And you finally work the nerve to go up to her. And before you can open your mouth, one of her friends starts coming over and so, hey, what's up? And, she starts talking and you're like, okay, now what? You just kind of stand there like an idiot, or,
Yeah.
you can adapt and
Or
start
you
talking
can
to both.
adapt. Yeah, yeah. Okay, Kurt, great. Well, we could keep talking. I'm sure we'll do another one of these podcasts. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being a stand for other men and taking time out of your life in order to pass down wisdom that you've accumulated during your life. It was very, very insightful and very enjoyable.
Oh, you're welcome. Anytime.
All right, brother. We'll be in touch. Take care.